yes, very short music, but you gotta understand we're still in the arcade phase. The arcade music was very short. All it was just for the title screen and based on the music and of course the title, the episode. We're talking about Galaga. All right. Now, I'm going a little bit out of order here because some of you may know Galaga is actually Galaxian Part 2. This is the predecessor to that. And so, but I'm going to talk about Galaga first because I played it more. And I believe I played it first. So for nostalgia's sake, it's coming in. So welcome back to Memory Lane, and we are still in the golden age of arcade gaming with this 1981 classic by Namco, Galaga. And as I stated 10 seconds ago, it's a sequel to Galaxian. Uh, Shigeru Yokoyama was the lead developer of this game, led the team to create this to be that sequel and release it in time to be one of the greatest of all time. So, it is one of the most successful game of the golden age of arcades, just like the other ones we've talked about, like Dig Dug and Pac-Man. This one is up there. This one's with them. It's on that list. Still to this day, just like Pac-Man and Dig Dug, it gets ported throughout systems and consoles and just ways to play it, you know. It appeared on the charts as one of the most successful games all the way through 1987. So for the past 6 years from its release until 1987, of course, it was on that chart of one of the greatest of all time, one of the top dogs of arcade gaming. All right. It was widely regarded as one of the greatest of all times, acclaimed by critics for its gameplay, innovation, addictive nature, and being a better Galaxian. Of course, it was part two. You know what I'm saying? It basically took what that game did and did it better. And like I said, there was many ports to consoles and many compilations. So of course, there's like the NES, the NES Classic, bunch of plug and plays. I believe you can get it on like compilation uh, games, like how the PS2, the PSP had a bunch of those arcade classic compilation games. I have one on the PSP and Galaga's on there. Arcade one up. I have the it's on the I believe it's on the Miss Pac-Man arcade one up and the Pac-Man. It's made by Namco, so it's gonna be a lot of the Namco classics. It's on the Namco Museum one I have on the PS2. So like and of course it's an arcade game, classic arcade game. You can probably just Google it and play it on a browser somewhere. Like it's just being consistently ported throughout and throughout time from 1981 until 2026. It's a long time. It's a long time for a game to go as long as it did. I mean, it's not the first time we talked about a game like that. Like I mentioned earlier, we had Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Frogger, Miss Pac-Man. Like it's still here. Relevance enough for the modern generation to play on modern systems and technology. Anyway, so what is Galaga? Well, it's a fixed shooter. Okay, you're controlling a Gayaraga. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Gayaraga at the bottom of the screen. So that's you. You're the shooter at the very bottom of the screen, and you got to prevent Galaga forces from destroying all mankind, which is those alien ships you're shooting at the top of the screen. And then there are 4 large alien ships at the very top. Those are called Gorg, the Boss Galaga. Gorg, I think I'm saying it. Gorg. I think I'm saying that right, right? Sounds like an alien. And the objective is to survive. I believe you only get 3 lives, like a lot of games did back then. And you just have to clear the map. Shoot all the alien ships on the screen. Once you do that, you move on to the next level, where it gets more harder and progressive, just like any other game would back then. Especially back then. The ships will shoot at you. Someone lunge towards you and charge after you, and you have to dodge them and shoot them before they hit you or shoot you and you blow up. And based upon my research, it said there's about 255 stages. I don't know who the hell sat there for that long playing Galaga, especially back then for 255 stages. Just imagine being a kid in the arcade with 1 quarter. Because remember, there was no such thing as memory cards or save files or, save states or nothing. When you die, you die. That's it. Put in another quarter, back to stage one. I like to know who sat there with 1 quarter and stood there the entire time in front of the screen at an arcade or a laundromat or a bowling alley or a movie theater or whatever, a convenience store, and just sat there and played all through 255 levels. They had to kick you out at some point. I was like, kid, you got to go on, man. You've been standing here for like 9 hours, sitting there, fucking knees buckling and feet hurt, eyes all blurry, can't see shit because you stared at the screen for that long. Ugh. By 1983, roughly a year and a half after it released, it was in the top 10 of the highest grossing games. And back then, and even still to this day, it's on numerous top 100 lists. Top 100 arcade games, top 100 retro games, top 100 games of all time, top 100 addicting games. Like it's just on a list like that. It's consistently on top 100 list from, let's just say from 1983 when it hit that first list all the way up till now. Still, that's a long time. That's just a year and a half after it released compared to a lot of games that still struggle now. I when I said I played this game first, I believe I did, and I want to say, if you guys remember, I remember being a kid playing the Atari because it was my mother's and she had it from when she was a kid. I don't remember Galaga being on there, but I do remember playing it a lot on like a TV plug and play. And plug and play where it's just like this little, it's a basically a portable console, just a joystick and a couple buttons, and of course 2 cords that plug into the TV. So the yellow cord for the visual, and then some had the white cord, some had a red cord, but it was for the sound, just a dual auxiliary, and it took batteries for the power, and it came loaded with 6 to 10 games, maybe 12, depending on the how big the plug and play was. But I think that's how I played Galaga first, was on that. I don't think I ever played on the Atari. So it was always on plug and plays, arcade cabinets, and then compilation discs. Like I said, on the PS2, I had like the Namco Museum. That's how I played it as well. So I never really had like I guess one of the OG cartridges of it for the Atari or for the NES. I just never, I didn't really grow up with those systems. I got my gaming started with the Super Nintendo, and it wasn't on there. Some of the classics are on there, but not, I don't think Galaga's on there. And then the PlayStation 1, I think it's on the PS1. I know there's some, I have a couple arcade classics compilations for the PS1, but I don't know if I personally have the one that had Galaga's on it. I'm not sure. But I know I have it on the PS2 and a PSP as well. I believe I have it on the PSP. And it was cool. The PSP, basically it was a portable. I would say that's what the PSP stands for, PlayStation Portable. But those compilation discs were genius for that system alone, because there was no such thing as download and play. I mean, there was if you had a PSP Go, but that was like by the time the PSP Go came out, the PS3 was already in full effect. So you had, why don't you just grab a couple of those compilation UMD discs for the PSP, and yeah, sure you have 3 discs in your hand, but you got like 24 games total. You know, they were genius for putting a lot of stuff on the PSP, and Galaga played really well. I'll play a lot of the arcade classics on the PSP because of that, like Galaga, Defender, Arch Rivals, Cyberball 2000 or 2077. I can't remember what it is now, but it basically like it's football with robots, American football with robots. Yeah, but that's I got a lot of my classic arcade gaming on the PSP back then with those games because I didn't have the OG cartridges, and the older I got, as time moved on, the more obscure actual arcades were becoming. Uh, yeah, and like I stated in an earlier episode, sure, we still have barcades, or bar arcades, or beercades. I know some people call them beercades. Yeah, those are still around, but you got to be legal enough to drink to enter those. It's a bar. But actual arcades where all ages can go, they were starting to get obscure when I was a kid, and of course, the older I got, the less they were a thing. Because Xbox and Nintendo and PlayStation, shit, that was the big deal. Like you had all these games to your disposal in front of you. That's when they started doing those compilation discs, which was genius on their part because they still do that to this day. And you just never forget those classics. Thanks to that, thanks to the compilations you get on your Xbox or PlayStation. I think Steam has some of them too. Play some of the arcade classics on Steam. And of course, there's people like me who talk about them on podcasts like mine, or play them on YouTube, or even bring them up at like a kind of like a reminiscent thing. Like, you guys remember this? I kind of do that on my YouTube shorts, you know. But these classics, Galaga and whatnot, should not be forgotten because I mean that's where kind of gaming started and it took off. Then the arcades became home consoles like the Atari and Amiga and Commodore and all that stuff, and the crash happened, and then Nintendo came with the NES, like Super Mario Brothers, and then the video game market surged to the top again. But thanks to the NES, you can play Galaga once again. You get a cart because there was a lot of arcade games that got ported to the NES to kind of help revive that. Not I wouldn't say nostalgia, but necessarily like the feeling of the arcade. Now you can play it at home with your friends. You buy the cartridge instead of putting quarters into a machine. But yeah, so like I said, it was Galaga and Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, you know. And I think Dig Dug had a cartridge. I don't. Frogger have one? I can't remember. But yeah, and personally, like this one is, I played this one first. I do like this one a little bit more than I like Galaxian. I think I'm saying that right for like Galaxy. But anyway, it's space shooters, fixed shooters in space. You're in a spaceship shooting aliens. It's like Space Invaders. It's all the same shit. Asteroids. Well, you're not shooting aliens and asteroids, but you're a ship in space and you're shooting. Man, like this is a good game. This is a pick up and play kind of game. A lot of these arcade games are good brain rot. But what's cool about these arcade games, like there's no story. There's not really a motive other than just to you know move on to the next stage. You know, the motive, especially back then, was like the high score. Who can get the highest score and keep it? That was a thing back in the day. But now it's just like pick up and play. I got 10 minutes to kill. Let's play a round or two of Galaga. Let's see how far I get in 10 minutes. You know, it's not like I'm playing an RPG where I got to sit here and do like a 12-minute story before I even get to press play on the game and play it myself. You know, or it's not like a fighting game where you just get kind of addicted into it. If for those who are really fans of fighting games like myself, you know, it's just a game you don't have to worry about stopping and saving in the middle of it. It's not a game where you don't have to worry about missing out on a story or something you have to come back to and pick up later. It's there. Like okay, here it is. Let's burn 5 minutes here, and we'll go on with that. No harm done. No harm, no foul. A lot of these arcade games were great for that. Brain rot, pick up and play. Anybody can play it. Grandmother can play games like that. Your parents, your younger siblings, anybody. That was so good about these games. Galaga was simple. Move left and right, shoot the ships, don't get hit. Easy. Easy peasy. Well, easier said than done, but it's not like, all you needed was one joystick and one button. You didn't really need a controller where you use all 10 of your fingers to use it. You just use, I mean, you can just use two fingers, one to shoot, one to move. It was that simple. It was that simple. Of course, higher you go. I don't remember how far I got to. I want to say like stage 10 was the absolute highest I got, but a long time ago. I couldn't imagine sitting there and getting all the way to stage 255, you know, or to imagine how hard that level was, like how fast. Like, like I said in Galaga, the Galaga aliens, they're in a formation, but then some jump out of formation and they come charging towards you. And of course, the further you get into the game, the harder the levels get, the faster they move. How fast were they fucking moving in stage 255? Like, you had to be on top of your shit to not get hit at all. And like, you'll get extra lives if you get a certain amount of points. I believe this is the one you get an extra ship. I believe if you get you can now see the bummer about using getting a double ship was that you use one of your lives. So sure, you'll have extra ammo because you're not just with the one or two shooter now. Now you're at three or four, however big it was. So you're able to cover more ground that way, but it also uses up one of your lives. So like, let's just say you have three lives and you decide to double up your ship. Now you have a double ship. Well, now you're down to two lives. You know, I believe that's how it works. I never bothered doing the double ship, especially like quite often because like I said, it just burns up on your lives. Because if you get hit, that's it. But I just prefer sticking with the one life and doing it the OG way of just with the double shooter. I think it was just a double shooter and the one ship and just kind of spraying all the aliens down as much as you can to move on to the next level. You get that high score and you get the of course the advancement because other than the high score, the motivation was how far can you get? It's like, okay, well, last time I got the stage 8. Let's make it to stage 9. What does stage 9 look like? You know, don't even worry about stage 255. Hardly anybody knew that back then, except for the people who stood there for that time and decided to do it, unless there was a magazine somewhere, an interview where Shigeru Yokoyama said, "Oh, there's 255 stages." I who did? Come on, man. I don't have the patience for that to sit there and play 255 stages at an arcade cabinet. You know, I barely got the patience now to sit on my couch with a wireless controller playing a game that's story based. You know, I I couldn't do it. Even some of the brain rot games I lose patience for because either it just takes too long or it moves too slow. Like one of my favorite games where I can just sit and just waste away and forget about life is The Sims. Even I lose patience with that. Not supposed to, but you do. It's like, man, hurry up, man. you know, sure you can speed it up, but it's like, what's the point? I don't know. I mean, sure, it was probably a lot easier to beat all the stages once you have a port for it on your Atari or your Nintendo or the Amiga, whatever console you had at home, because you could sit down. You're at home. I don't know if you were able to pause it uh, on the Nintendo version because it was a game that never had a pause button. There was no pause button on arcade cabinets. Put your quarter in and play till you die. And that's it. Put in another quarter or move on somewhere else. There was no pause and save. There was no save states. There was no rewind. Whatever else there is today. It was best of luck to you. That's it. All these games back then were designed to take your quarters. That's how they made their money. That's how they got their popularity. Well, it'd be cool to see arcades come back. Not just barcades, but actual arcades. A place where you can go and there's a whole room full of arcade cabs and you just let loose, you know. Because the closest we get to shit like that is like restaurants that have it, movie theaters, and even bowling alleys. It's like I want more than just skee ball and air hockey and the claw machine. I want Donkey Kong, I want Galaga, I want Centipede, I want Pac-Man. I don't want basketball the entire time. Of course, those are fun, but it's like, let's do old school arcades where you actually play video games, not just, you know, let's see how many tickets you can win or points or whatever to exchange for, you know, odds and ends that you're gonna play with for 5 seconds and throw it away. you know, let's actually get arcades where it's like, well, if you're gonna play a game, let's play a game, have fun. Anybody can play it just as much as you can play air hockey or skee ball. Kids can play Pac-Man. You can play Centipede. Maybe your parents or your grandparents come with you and play Dig Dug. You know, or Donkey Kong or Millipede, or like the names just go on. But it's of course it's not going to be the same now because there's a lot of just flashy stuff now versus what it was. But I have to give flowers to these games because it started here before it became what we know as video gaming, especially at home and couch co-op and couch gaming and of course the online stuff, which is what we know today. It's come a long way since these guys. These are the founding fathers of gaming. Maybe a bit of a stretch, but you know what I'm saying. Like, we all lined up, kids in the 80s who are now, in their 40s, 50s, maybe some in their 40s. Even kids in the 90s who grew up who are in their mid to late 30s now remember arcades better than me. I'm 30. So it's, I caught the very ass end of all that, you know, but I wasn't there for the full ride. I'm not old enough to be there for that, unfortunately, but it was there. It was there, and I saw it with my own eyes. I put quarters in the machine, you know. I sat there and played games, pole position, you know. Remember pole position? Of course, Frogger and Pac Man. Those ones were everywhere, especially Pac Man was everywhere. So was Space Invaders. I remember Space Invaders was always at a laundromat up the street from the house I grew up in. I but I just want to kind of pay homage to these classics. Give them their flowers like I always do. Kind of the whole reason behind this is just travel back down memory lane and just give them their flowers before I move on to games that we all know and love today, especially people my age. PlayStation 2, PS1, Super Nintendo, Xbox. Before we move on to the bigger stuff, I want to, it's kind of why I started with like the mobile games and the Flash games, the browser games, because like we all played those because we all had access to them one way or another. But arcade games were just as accessible, whether you had a console, even some cell phones. Cell phones had like Snake and Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man on it, Dig Dug. So, remember cell phones that came with games on them? There was no app store to download all this shit. That's, just kind of that quote unquote founding fathers of video gaming, you know, before we were sitting our asses on a couch with a controller where we use all 10 of our fingers to play games. We were sitting on the floor in front of a TV with using half of our hands to play the games, or even standing at an arcade cabinet somewhere in a public place, putting money into it to play it. Uh, it's just memories can go as far as that, as far as what I said. You playing it at home, it's it just came a certain way, and there's a history behind it that I personally do not want to ignore. I know some people tend to skip over games like these because there's not a whole lot to talk about, and really there isn't. I covered the gist of the game. I don't want to go through the entire thing because this is not really a kind of a lecture of gaming. This is more just it's memory lane, it's memories. So, like, here's some facts about the game, and then here's my memories of it. So I can't just sit here and try to make an hour-long podcast about a game I can sum up in 25, 30 minutes like I have been. But once I get onto these bigger games that have more stuff to offer and talk about, then yeah, there'll be longer episodes. But I personally don't want to kind of just skip over these ones either. Now, I'm not going to do every arcade game. I'm going to do the ones that I personally played, and then we'll come back to it. Next week, we may or may not talk about Galaxian. May or may not talk about Asteroids, Paperboy, Defender, Donkey Kong. Those are all arcade games that I played, both the classics and remakes. And so, I'm gonna talk about them. You know, but that's all I can say about Galaga. It's a fun, addicting little game that we all remember that we can go back and play like it we just did back in the day and just kind of have like no issue playing it. And with that being said, it's time for my plugs. Then I'm gonna get out of here. Uh, the podcast downloads are going up. That's cool. I love it. I'm getting closer to 200 downloads. That is really cool. This podcast is nowhere near a year old, and I've already got damn near 200 downloads. That's awesome. Keep it up. I love knowing the fact that these numbers are going up and people are listening to my episodes long enough to be considered a statistic. That's To me, that's just great. That's a win for me. And YouTube, Kevin Gill Gaming. Oh, subscriber count going up. Views are going up. I surpassed 100,000 views and counting. That's awesome. And I'm getting closer to 100 subscribers. That's also awesome. As of right now, I'm currently doing a playthrough of Batman Arkham Asylum, one of my personal favorites. I suggest you check it out, especially for those who like to 100% the game and get all the Riddler stuff. Kind of tell you where all that stuff's at. Of course, the game's been out long enough, but still, you want somebody who can play the game with their eyes closed. It's me. All right, I love that game to death. But check out my other stuff on YouTube. I did a full playthrough of SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, Super Mario World, some Flash games here and there. It's a good time. It's a good time over there on YouTube. And then my socials, Facebook and Instagram, Kevin Go Gaming. All my sources have the same profile picture, so you know you're at the right place. But my followers on Instagram and Facebook are going up as well. That's awesome. I didn't think Facebook is a little slow, but I see the numbers creeping up every once in a while. Both my views, my likes, and my followings. That's awesome. Instagram views and followers are going up. That's also awesome. I love all that. I love every bit of it. It's just a hobby of mine. I would love to kind of advance it more than that, take it more seriously, but there's nothing wrong with it being a hobby. It's fun. A hobby of gaming turns into a hobby of sharing the love for it. Why not? It's a community, man. All right, y'all. I'm out.